Good evening and welcome to Local Views. My name is Lawrence Gray. We've entitled this segment Straight Talk. Next item is something that affects particularly local elections like in Smithtown or any town throughout the state. It's called bait and switch, and here's how it works. New York is probably the only state in the Union, there might be one other, that allows a Republican, with the permission of the Conservative Party leaders or Democratic Party leaders or Independence Party leaders, to run on those other party lines, even though that person is not registered in that party. And vice versa, Democrat on Republican, Conservative on Independent, mix it up any way you want. Well, a practice that has been going on, for instance, in Smithtown and other towns for many, many years, that is, as a matter of fact, reported in the press, is something called bait and switch. And how it works is this. You take someone who wants to run for town councilwoman in Smithtown. She's a Democrat. So what happens? Petitions are gathered for her on the Democratic line to designate her as the Democratic Party's candidate. Simultaneously, pursuant to a corrupt, illegal, felonious deal, someone in control of the Independence Party runs a placeholder or shadow candidate on the petition for the Smithtown clerk. Both petitions for the town council, Democrat, and the petition for town clerk are filed with the Board of Elections. A few days after the independent candidate for the town clerk's office is filed, that candidate suddenly files a certificate of declination declining the Independence Party's line. Well, those party leaders have to find a substitute candidate. By sheer coincidence, if you believe in the tooth fairy, they suddenly designate the candidate on the Democratic line for the town council seat to be the Independence Party candidate for the town council. Now that candidate has two lines. But what happened to the independent candidate for the town clerk? I'll tell you what happened. Pursuant to a corrupt agreement, the Democrats who went out simultaneously and obtained signatures for their candidates on the Democratic designating petitions have their candidate drop off, and then they substitute the Independence Party person onto their Democratic line to run for town clerk. The ultimate windup is that the race is fixed. People who signed a Democratic designating petition never signed for the independence candidate, and people who signed an independence designating petition for town council never signed for the Democratic candidate. It's all done in the back room. They switch cross-party designations. They sign certificates substituting each other's candidate, and you wind up, pursuant to a corrupt backroom deal, with one candidate on two lines for the town council, one candidate on the Democratic line and the Independence Party line for town clerk. And not one voter has signed a designating petition for the candidates from the other party. 17-158 of the election law says that that is a felony, a Class E felony. Essentially, it prohibits quid pro quo backroom deals between party leaders, or for that matter, any person which attempts to buy political or sell political support or a party designation or a party office as a consideration or a promise for another group to supply political consideration or a party office. It's a form of political bribery and bribe receiving, except the coin of the realm is political office and political designations. I look at it this way. I assume there are none of you that would go to a racetrack if for a moment you thought that the races were fixed. Well, if you wouldn't go to a racetrack knowing that the races were fixed, why would you bother going into an election booth when, if the election hasn't been fixed in advance, certainly been handicapped or rigged? And we see this time after time at the local level. As a matter of fact, if you'll bear with me, I'd like to read a piece from David Ambrose, Smithtown News, which he wrote in 2005 with respect to what was going on in the town of Smithtown. And it reads as follows. These are Mr. Ambrose's words, they're not mine. Voters sign a petition for one candidate, but soon after the petition is filed with the Suffolk County Board of Elections, a different candidate is substituted. Politicians in Suffolk County have made a mockery of the designating petition process. It is intended to allow voters enrolled in a political party to have a say in the candidates that they want and who they're going to be. Instead, it has become a process commandeered by people who are tricking voters enrolled in their political party. If the district attorney decided today that it is fraud to preconceive a deal to flip-flop candidates on designating petitions, he'd certainly be busy. Mr. Ambrose refers to what I have described as the use of shadow or placeholder candidates. You get a person registered in one of the parties, you put them on the ballot, you run around, you get 1,000 innocent voters to sign a designating petition for that person. A couple of days after the designating petition is filed, that person suddenly declines. They drop off the ballot, which means that the party leaders of that party can then substitute anybody they want to. This is not democracy. As a matter of fact, an election in a communist country doesn't seem much worse.